Good morning. Welcome to Sunday morning. Nice to see y'all. Welcome to Claudia. I don't think I've seen you before. Nice to have you here. Welcome back, Julie. Glad you traveled safely and made it home.
Thanks, Ken.
Today, we're going to talk about compassion. And last week, I talked about self-compassion. Today, I'm going to talk more broadly about compassion in general and may continue with that theme for the next few weeks. And also, going to bow, first say greetings to the people I can see on Zoom and greetings to the folks on Facebook and YouTube who I cannot see. Happy to have everybody here. And we're also today going to bow to Tina Turner, who died last week. And what a lot of people don't know about Tina Turner is she was a devoted and vocal Nichiren Buddhist and gave a really excellent interview about that in Tricycle Magazine, the Buddhist Review. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and offer a little homage. But first, let's meditate. So, I ask you to bear with me all a little bit today. My back's a little sore, so I might be moving around a little bit. Mindfulness of the body. Let's start by finding a comfortable meditation posture. And that's a posture where we can be alert but relaxed at the same time. There's actually 4 meditation postures: sitting, walking, standing, and lying down. Most people in these Sunday sessions are sitting. Some people have contacted me about meditating lying down, and that's a perfectly acceptable posture. People have medical issues or back issues. If you're going to meditate laying on your back, the suggestion is you have your forearm on the floor, but your hand in the air, so your arm's at a 90-degree angle. That way, if you fall asleep, your arm will come down and you wake up. So in a sitting posture, just let your back be straight. Not rigid, but like in its natural curve. And tuck in your chin just a little bit. And it's like if there was a string at the crown of your head, just pulling it up a little bit. Tuck your chin in without stressing or straining the muscles in your neck or shoulders. And just letting your body settle. Just letting your body settle into gravity doing its thing. You might want to sway slightly back and forth and come to a center. Do the same thing again, sway slightly back and forth or side to side. And let your body come to rest in the center that works for you. Just relaxing into the present moment where nothing is happening other than just sitting here in the simplicity of this moment. I'm going to invite you to take a few slow, deep breaths just to connect to the present moment, connect to your body, connect to your breathing. Long, slow, deep breath in. Long, slow exhale. Receiving the in-breath. And as you breathe out, just begin to let your body relax and soften. Relaxing the muscles around your eyes and your face and your jaw. They do a lot of work. Letting your mouth fall slightly open for a second to relax your jaw muscles before your lips come back together again. Deep breath in. As you exhale, just relaxing your shoulders and your chest and your belly. And letting your breathing return to normal. And continuing to relax and soften on the out breath. And soften your belly. We hold in our belly, we hold it tight a lot. Just let it hang. And let it expand as you breathe in. And now bring your attention and your focus to your breathing. The sensations of the body, breathing in and out. And rest your focus there. Some people focus on the sensations of the air moving in and out of your nose. Focusing on your breathing. Or you can focus on the chest and the belly moving up and down, expanding, contracting. And some people focus on just the overall global experience of the body breathing. Letting your attention rest there. Not trying to do anything with the breath. To breathe deeper or longer. Just accompanying your breathing with your intention and your attention. Your mind wanders off and you notice that you're thinking, which is inevitable. That's okay. The mind thinks the way the lungs breathe and the heart beats, and the mind generates thoughts. But just notice the phenomenon of thinking without getting involved in the story or the memory or the issue or whatever the thought stream is generating. And meet that compassionately as just something that the mind does. And gently slide your attention compassionately back to your focus on the breath. You'll do this several times. Most people do this off and on, all throughout a meditation. Just noticing the activity of the mind, the thoughts that come and go. And just then bring your attention back to begin again, focused on your breathing. Thoughts arise, feelings arise, sensations come and go. Like clouds that pass before you. And when you notice, all good. Without frustration or recrimination or wondering whether you're doing it right, because you actually are doing it right. Just bring your attention gently, compassionately back to the breath. And as we come towards the end of this sitting, I invite you to settle into this moment. The simplicity, the safety of the present moment. And to whatever degree you can, let the peace of this moment help you open your heart. To view the world through kindness and compassion. And may it be that the benefits of this practice enable us to walk with compassion and kindness through our lives, to see the world through kind eyes. And when we witness suffering, to not turn away, but meet it with kindness and wishing for the healing and well-being of the people we see. To radiate kindness and compassion into our household and neighborhoods, to the people we pass by on the street and we encounter, however briefly. May the benefits of this practice be of benefit to all beings everywhere. May all beings be happy and be met with kindness and compassion. May all beings be well and be met with kindness and compassion. May all beings be safe, nestled in kindness and compassion. May all beings be at ease and at peace. Thank you for your practice. Today we're going to talk about compassion. And as a lead into that, I was reading some articles about compassion in Tricycle magazine, and I came upon an interview that Tina Turner did 3 years ago about her relationship with Nichiren Buddhism. I don't know a whole lot about the Nichiren, but their practice involves chanting, which I really appreciate. And they chant the mantra Om Nyo Renge Kyo over and over again, and it takes them to a deeper space. So I thought I would share some outtakes from that interview that I copied and pasted. She said, "I believe the remedy for divisiveness is to cultivate and spread compassion for all living beings. It seems in so many places there's a drought of love and kindness these days. Some people react to pain by inflicting more pain on themselves and others. This is a vicious cycle that creates more negative karma and makes things worse for everyone. Our human family must end the toxic karmic pattern of divisiveness before it ends us. Later on, she said, the most important thing is to never give up, no matter what. When we choose hope over despair, we have already won. Winter always turns to spring is one of my favorite sayings from Nichiren. I like that. Winter always turns to spring. She said, Buddhism teaches equality, the empowering principle that everyone has the potential to attain enlightenment and become absolutely indestructibly happy. When we come to see this potential in ourselves, we can see and respect it in everyone else too. And at the end of the interview, she said, devote yourself to becoming the type of person who can always bring out the goodness in yourself and others. That's how to create real value, satisfaction, and sweetness in life. So, Tina, I bow. And that's a good lead into our discussion of compassion. Compassion is about how we relate to suffering in the world, to explore how we can turn towards suffering and grief in a way that heals ourselves and heals those around us. When we witness people suffering, when we witness pain and grief, often it's our first impulse to turn away. It's painful to look at. It's hard to be with people who are grieving. But what if we don't resist? What if we allow ourselves to witness suffering and to have that open our hearts? It's uncomfortable, to be sure. But what if we decide to be okay with that? To step away from our impulse to reject whatever is uncomfortable and to look right at it. I think about acting out behaviors. People act out. And when somebody's doing something that seems wrong or makes you uncomfortable or is harmful, can we look at that and say, instead of turning away or judging or having an impulse to punish, can we look at that and say, oh, that person is suffering and this is what that looks like? Instead of this person is bad and needs to be fixed. Maybe this person is wounded and needs to be healed. And it requires us to be compassionate with ourselves in those moments of resistance. When we first go to judgmentalism, or I don't want to look at that. And be okay with the grief of witnessing suffering and decide that we're still okay. And I think it's important to note, having no resistance to suffering does not mean we shouldn't have strong responses to suffering and injustice in the world. But it means accepting and embracing our experience of witnessing and feeling that suffering and using that to empower ourselves into action, into compassion, into compassionate action. And one of the fruits of meditation is learning to see that our own resistance or contraction in the face of suffering itself is a form of suffering. And that's okay. Learning to know that we are okay in the midst of grief and suffering is one of the great gifts of mindfulness practice. And it's a practice to be cultivated. Like growing a seed, corn does not like come from the ground full grown. It starts in a kernel and grows. The way compassion starts in a kernel and grows. It starts with an intention to meet the world with compassion instead of meeting the world with resistance, instead of turning away. And I've found that meditation practice basically helps me cultivate more space around my own grief and trauma without rejecting or reacting to it. And of course, it's a work in progress. Some days are better than others. But one of the ways to cultivate this is with metta practice, loving kindness practice. I talked last week about self-compassion, and I think it starts with being compassionate with ourselves, and that makes it easier to bring compassion out into the world. And we can start by wishing ourselves loving kindness. May I be happy. May I be well. May I be safe. May I be at ease and at peace. And then widening the circle to someone you love. May you be happy. May you be well. May you be safe. May you be at ease and at peace. And continuing to widen the circle to where we're offering that to difficult people, because who needs it more? And then offering it to the world at large. May all sentient beings be happy. May all sentient beings be well. May all sentient beings be safe. May all sentient beings be at ease and at peace. And that can be the genesis of compassion that we can bring to the world. Just starting with wishing well rather than turning away. I was a therapist in private practice for close to 25 years. And I had to learn to relate to and embrace my own issues. And in doing that, that made it easier for me to see the pain of people I was working with without resisting what they may be touching or mirroring in my own grief. And this started, I was still working as a journalist, and my father had died. And I got involved with a counseling agency in Palo Alto, California, grief counseling, paraprofessionals. And about a year after that, my former counselor called me up and said, "We're doing a training. And I think that you'd be good at this, and I think it would be good for you." So I went off and did the training and met a woman whose mother had died, and I can't say much about that, other than that her experience of growing up in an alcoholic, abusive family mirrored my experience. And after I got over being freaked out by that and processing that with my supervisors, what I noticed was I just got it. I just got her. And she knew it. I didn't have to make a reach to understand it. She felt heard and understood because I had a lens through which I could see her, the lens of my own experience. And that was such a profound experience for me that I actually quit journalism, went back to grad school, and got a therapy license. That was the genesis of that, which eventually led me to sitting here with you all this morning, for which I am grateful. To use our suffering as a lens through which we can see and understand others, that is the basis of compassion. The 12-steppers talk about this all the time. The last part of the last step of the 12 steps, having had a spiritual awakening, we sought to carry this message to others. Since we have been here, we can now bring the message of compassion and healing. And it's not a switch we just flip on in the back of our head. And if there was, I would have located it a long time ago and would have done one session therapy. Oh, the switch is back here. But it's not. We're not wired that way. Nobody is wired that way. So we cultivate it and we practice it and we notice when we're meeting the world with aversion or judgmentalism, and we meet that with kindness and compassion towards ourselves, which makes it easier to open our hearts to what's going on. And it's the difference between reacting and responding. We see something difficult in front of us and we react by protect my heart. Okay, something comes next. We then respond. Responding is making choices. I'm going to choose to witness this and be okay. Be okay with my response to this. Be okay with the uncomfortableness of this. And mindfulness practice is the practice of learning to be wise with grief and suffering over time. The important piece is over time. The most profound story I heard about this was from the Dalai Lama. I got to see the Dalai Lama when he came to California in 2001. But that was pretty cool. And later saw a documentary about him. And someone asked him about compassion, and he told this story about his teacher was imprisoned by the Chinese for years. And when he got out, the Dalai Lama asked him, "Did you ever feel you were actually in danger?" And the old Tibetan said, "I felt I was something," I'm paraphrasing, "I felt I was afraid I was going to lose my compassion towards the people who were towards my captors." That's a pretty advanced state to look into that kind of suffering and say, I still want to keep my heart open. But over time, we can lose our resistance and be able to feel and experience, not to struggle with it or be victimized by it, but to meet the suffering we see with an open heart and in a way that allows us to be present as a healing presence. I was in Santa Cruz, California. I used to live near Santa Cruz. And the Santa Cruz Coffee Company. You know you're in a coffee shop in Santa Cruz because there's 25 different pour-overs and you can get 8 different combinations of coffee in any one of them. It's very California. There was an apparently homeless guy, apparently mentally ill, who was very agitated at the counter and was really pushing the 19-year-old kids behind the counter. And he's getting agitated and they're getting agitated and everybody's getting agitated. Right? And I just looked at the guy and I said, "Hey man, are you having a rough day?" Just like that. And it startled him a little bit. And I just repeated it. "You having a hard day? I get it." And he started to calm down a little bit. But to do that, I had to slow down my breathing and make a decision that I was okay. And when he calmed down, everybody else started to calm down. And that's an example of how mindfulness can let us witness our own reactions to whatever is going on, decide that we're okay, and meet it compassionately. Stephen Levine used to like to tell this story. You're walking down the street. When I was a reporter in Palo Alto, California, a very upscale community, and I did a newspaper story on homelessness in Palo Alto, and people called me and yelled at me. Right? How can you say that about our community? And my response may be a little discompassionate. That guy on the bench who's yelling at you to get off his bench, he doesn't sit there, he lives there. Right? And it brings me to a story that Stephen Levine, the Buddhist teacher and big in the hospice movement, used to say, you're walking down the street and you see a homeless person lying on the ground under a bench and he smells bad and he looks awful. He hasn't showered in God only knows how long. And our first impulse is to turn away, of course. But can you look at that person and say, oh, that's an interesting expression of God? And see that person as suffering, and maybe drop somebody in the cup he's got, or not. And one of the things I've learned recently in another talk I caught on compassion is compassion includes awareness and acknowledgement. You see somebody outside the supermarket with a sign, need money. Even if you don't have any money to drop in, I'd like to just turn toward them and say, sorry, I can't help you today, but I see you. They usually smile. The simple, compassionate actions of seeing and acknowledging people. It doesn't always have to be a big thing. I mean, it can be a big enterprise, right? I can join Greenpeace and go out to sea and all that, which I probably won't. Or I can just smile at somebody who's on the street and wish them well. And I read a quote that really it's about the numerous, unnoticed little actions of kindness that we just do every day. Holding a door for somebody, smiling at somebody, helping the old lady put the groceries in her car when she's struggling with it out in the parking lot. I don't want to give you the impression that I'm hanging out in the grocery store parking lot, but it's a great place to like people watch and see people. So I invite you to be compassionate and kind with yourself first, and let that flow out of you into the world. Thank you for your kind attention. Any comments, questions, thoughts, compassionate or otherwise?
Yeah, thank you, Ken. I really appreciated that. And I was also reading about Tina Turner this week and her connections with Buddhism, which I had not known before. So I thought that was very interesting. Well, the question I have is, so a friend of mine is suffering from cancer, going through chemotherapy. Yeah, she's a former coworker. So I'm not best friends with her, close friends, and it's same with one of my senseis in my karate class. You know, his young son died suddenly, and this was a few years ago, but he's still suffering very much from it. And it's I just find it very hard for me to talk to them about these things, and I try, but you know, there's those awkward long silences where like I don't. So I just start to fill them in with stuff. I can't stop myself from babbling. I'll start talking about, I'm going to see my sister in Spain in August, but then I'm like, I feel guilty because then my friend, I know she's suffering, she can't go on trips like that. So then I feel like, I'm only making this situation worse. It's better for me not to even try to talk to them because I'm only going to make the situation worse. So I don't know. I don't know though. I don't know how to address those conversations.
Let's start with be kind and compassionate with yourself. These are difficult situations. Start there. It's confusing to witness this kind of suffering because we feel, because we're compassionate people, we feel like we want to say the thing, right? But the thing doesn't exist.
Yeah. And you're worried you're going to say the wrong thing too.
Well, what I've noticed, because I was a grief counselor for a really long time and I worked in hospice, and people walk away from people for just this reason. They don't know what to do and they're afraid of doing whatever it is that they're going to do and doing it wrong. Something as simple as, hello, I see you and I'm not going away. I see this happening to you, and I'm here. There's a guy, really interesting guy named Frank. I may mispronounce this. Ostasteski. You should check him out. He's worth reading. But I've seen him present a couple of times at the mindfulness and psychotherapy conferences, and he's big. He's a mucky muck at the San Francisco Zen hospice, and big in that whole movement. And somebody asked him, "What's the most important thing you do when you sit down, when you come in to talk to somebody in hospice?" He says, "I sit down." That's it. Your presence is enough. And I get the thing about feeling compelled to like fill the void, right, with words. But you don't have to do this. You don't have to. It's uncomfortable, which is what I was talking about before. Being with the uncomfortableness of somebody who's suffering, deciding that you're okay in the weird feeling of it all, and just be present. That's what people need, to just be present.
Yeah.
And take it easy on yourself. We often have this conversation where I'm reminding you to be kind and gentle with Julie.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you're right. I know it's better to be with them, even if it's very awkward or uncomfortable and you don't know what to say or what not to say. I know it's better to still make that effort or be with them as opposed to avoiding the situation
Mm-hmm.
for fear of doing the wrong thing. But it's no, it's just it's helpful to hear you say that. You know, sometimes you just need to be reminded.
You're a compassionate presence, and your presence is a gift. Gift enough.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anybody else have anything? I see a message in the chat.
This is obliquely related, but grief. After a 25-year relationship, I was surprised with the divorce, and it nearly destroyed me. It took me a couple of years to get to the point where I asked myself, if you knew it was going to end this way, would you have not done it? And I realized, no, I would have done it. Many amazing, wonderful things happened in my life. 2 beautiful children, etc., etc. It took a while to realize that asking myself that question, whether or not I felt gratitude about anything, and I'm thinking of your sensei, Julie, and his son, was the moment at which allowed me to turn from looking back at my losses to being present where I was and a future of possibilities. That was a big lesson in gratitude for me. Is no matter what a shit show it can become or be, there's still jewels inside of it that we're fortunate. I agree with what Ken says, though. It's just acknowledging and being present is the wonderful thing to do.
That's the best we can do, often enough.
I have a friend who's very compassionate. He won't just give people money on the street, or the homeless, or people that have a sign out, homeless, anything will help. He stops and he asks them their name, tells them, I'm Don, don't lose hope. And he has a conversation with them as you would with a real person or with a friend.
Yeah.
And I learned a lesson from this guy about not just lowering my car window and handing a couple bucks to the person, but asking them, who are you? What's your name? Do you have a place to stay tonight? Do you know about this shelter or that shelter or whatnot? And trying to give them a little more than just money.
There's a lot of compassionate action just in seeing people.
Yes.
People.
Yes.
My early experience when I was, first working as a grief counselor before getting a license, that paraprofessional training. One of the things someone suggested is just repeat back what you heard. Someone says, "I'm having a rough day," and you said, "Oh, you're having a rough day." They know they've been heard and seen. Claudia writes a message. What I witnessed versus what is revealed to me by God for a reason. Need help with that, please. Sometimes I feel sorry for criminals. It's a bit weird. I don't think that's weird. First off, I have a very high threshold for weird. And weird is a superpower. Okay? I used to have a panel from Kathy, the comic, up on the wall next to my desk at the newspaper. She's throwing open her arms and saying, "We have to embrace the weirdness." It's not weird to look at somebody whose suffering comes out as is expressed in abhorrent behavior. I really like the term acting out because I think it's a very precise term. What we don't express, we act out. Grief and pain will always find expression. Always, always. We can talk about it. We can do artwork. We can write poetry, all kinds of ways. Or we can ignore it, suppress it, try to act like it doesn't exist, harden our hearts to it, in which case it comes out as behavior. And can we meet that and say, "Oh, that person is really suffering"? When I finished my last year of grad school, I had to do an internship. That's how I got involved in sexual abuse treatment. And I chose that clinic on purpose to intern in and then stay there for a number of years. And I'm a total greenhorn. And everyone who goes into this clinic as an intern does individual and group. And the only group that they had available to plug me into was the adult sex offender group. And I had a real problem with that. And it took me on a very deep journey. But then I heard a very interesting story from a guy who had molested various children in his family at the same age. They were all the same age. And in his story, found out that he was molested at exactly that age by somebody just like him. And he had never healed it. And that's what it turned out to look like. The deeper the grief, the more abhorrent the acting out behavior. So can we look at somebody and say, "I'm not going to participate in that, but I recognize that you're bleeding, and I hope that you heal it." So I hope, Claudia, I hope you found that helpful. And if it is weird, just so what? Say so what to weirdness. I'm going to make that a bumper sticker. Say so what to weirdness. We are at 9:04. It's really good to see y'all. Julie, I'm glad you made it back safely. Traveling is good. Being home is good too.
Yes, it's good to be home.
It's good. I was in New Mexico for 10 days and got a couple of friends do these sessions. I had a really great time, especially, Taos Pueblo. It's mystical. It's great to get home, sleep in my own bed.
Yeah.
Thank y'all. Look forward to seeing y'all again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Claude, are you still here? Thanks for joining. Hope to see you again.